Commissioner. And now we go to Senator McDowell. You 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Senator,
I want to welcome the Commissioner here and the Assistant Commissioner and Assistant Richardson as well. And the first thing I want to say is that I welcome your response to Deputy Brophy that you're not going to resign. And I want to say you have my full confidence and my support. I also want to say this, that some of the people who have called for your resignation in recent times have used violent disorder as a political tactic in the past, and I won't put it further than that. The second thing is, on a general issue, the Constitution does, as you say, Commissioner, guarantee the right of freedom of assembly as a fundamental right of the citizen, but it's peaceful assembly. And it seems to me that there has been a huge increase in the amount of disorder and breaches of the Public Order Act of 1994. I just want to draw to your attention footage I saw of protesters in Ballybrack screaming in the face of Gardaí that they were scumbags and other words not so polite as well, and being effectively let away with it. We have had outside this House, surrounded on both sides, massively disorderly demonstrations. And I do think it's time, and I ask you for not merely yourself, but perhaps the Minister for Justice, to indicate that the right of assembly and the right of protest is peaceful protest and nothing else but that. Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. The Constitution talks about peaceable protest, and then there's a lot of jurisprudence in respect of the right of assembly, and we respect that in a democratic society, that citizens can gather. The Public Order Act that you refer to, and in particular Section 8 of that, which allows conditions to be placed on a protest and directions given to a protest, is a very useful piece of legislation in terms then of following through on breaches. But I have no expectation that members of Garda Síochána should, in effect, stand and be the subject of, hours of abuse there. Like, arrests, if appropriate, should be made at the time.
Yes, I mean, the Public Order Act also gives members, any member of Garda Síochána, the right to direct people to disperse and to move away, failing which they will be arrested in cases of disorder. And it does seem to me that in legal history there used to be something called reading the Riot Act, and that was that a warning to a riotous group: you must disperse or you will be dealt with. That should be used more often, and it should have been used outside this House too. They should have been told to go away. That's not happening, and I suggest to you that that's something that should be considered in future. A second thing that I want to put to you is, because I have a double job as a senator and as a barrister, I crisscross this city maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And I do have to say that what Judge Charlton was talking about, visible policing, just isn't there most of the time. I do have to say that. Now, I don't know why that is, but foot patrols, bicycle patrols, motorcycle patrols, they just don't seem to be there. I just don't see them. And I do think, and I welcome your remarks that you're taking a different approach to perhaps policing the city centre in future. I do think that you and your officers have to make sure that there's more visible policing in future, because it increases public confidence and it deters disorder. In that context, and this is a matter that I have raised with you before, the reserve had 1,100 members, is now down to 300 or 400 members. It's planned to be up to 2,000 members, but if you want visible policing and you want to double the apparent sight of 2-member patrols, surely the reserve would be a hugely invaluable resource. And I just noted in the latest statistics which you've published that there's now only 100 reservists in the whole DMR area, which is sad, really. And I would ask you to not to take a relaxed approach to this, but to revamp the reserve and get it done quickly, because there are good people in our society who do want to help and do want to support the Gardaí, and unfortunately their experience to date was very unsatisfactory.
Thank you. In respect of the reserve, the regulations are at their very final stage, and there's new regulations written for the reserve to try and expand their role and actually, in effect, give them a more meaningful operational impact on the ground. And we hope then that we'll be able to launch a recruitment campaign then for reserve in the first quarter of next year. And we wish to have a targeted campaign, part of it around the city here, but also for Gaeltacht areas.
Yeah. You mentioned the difficulties of Garda man-hour being wasted on going through manual inspections of CCTV. Can you use civilian employees to do that? It doesn't necessarily involve detectives to watch the actual footage if they know what they're looking for.
Well, of course, because this is going to require a huge effort. So Garda staff, at the same time, I would suggest Garda staff are fully deployed. So when they're doing this, they're not doing other work, other essential work. But the human eye does have weaknesses there. People get tired, and lose concentration, and perhaps a fleeting image that the AI might be lost. And in these modern times, every individual is almost uniquely dressed in terms of how they appear. So whether they're masked or not is in some ways irrelevant, because you seek sufficient CCTV to capture the moment before they were masked and then take forward. So it's a complex investigation, and we wish to really expedite it as much as possible.
No. The last thing I just want to say, Chairman, if I may, it seems to me that, going back to the comments I made about Ballybrack, that respect for An Garda Síochána in some quarters has evaporated, and that there's been an incremental impunity on the part of people who confront Gardaí, that they will get away with disorder and conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace. And I do believe that in this context, I noticed in today's Irish Times an article about Gardaí being worried about using batons because GSOC might get on their case and they might be suspended or under investigation for a long period of time. But would you agree with me that, whatever you want to call them, in deference to Senator Ruane, I won't use the word thug, but I'll use a different Dublin term, gurrier, that somebody confronting a member of An Garda Síochána should feel that if they use violence, that the Garda not merely will be proportionate, but will also come off best out of any confrontation. That seems to me to be something which was the case in years gone by, but these people seem at the moment to have no respect and no real belief that they will come off worst if they offer violence to members of An Garda Síochána.
Well, I point to the 11,000 arrests that made this year in between South and North Central Division alone, and I also would point to the increase in the strength of the incapacitant spray that's going to be provided to all members. So the small canister that every member would carry on their duty rig belt, and that's going to be available to all. Obviously, we have a more diverse workforce, and the qualities that individuals might have been recruited for 40, 50 years ago are somewhat different now. So I have to make sure that members of An Garda Síochána are properly equipped for such violent confrontation, and that's why we're moving on the incapacitant spray.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to move on now to some of our guests, and I'm going to start with Deputy Crowe.
Sorry, I've just received a note. There's a small update I have to receive. May I,
Please
could
do.
have a 5 minutes?
Yes, please.
5 minute break, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
I'm going to suspend the Meeting for five minutes?
thank
5
you.
minutes, yeah.
Thank you.
Suspend for 5 minutes, and we'll resume then. We'll resume at Crow in the hot seat.